Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. In this video, we are going to run down the top 10 most submitted books into CGC. And as a reminder, this data comes directly from the people at CGC, and it's my way of providing you with a leading indicator on what is to come in the comic book market. Overall, my goal is to help you to make sense of comic book collecting. With that said, let's get to the list. Number 10 on the list is King in Black issue number 1. And last month, I wondered if this book was going to hold on and stay on the list, and we now have our answer. This book, King in Black, was in the top 5 in December and January, but now is on the verge of dropping out of the top 10 altogether. This isn't necessarily a bad thing and might just be a reflection of the natural decline in submissions for a book that has essentially run its course. And time will tell whether the book stays on the list or continues to slide all the way off. But what I will tell you is when you look at the data for this book, Cover A seems to be holding on to its value at roughly the Go Collect FMV of $65. And again, only time will tell how this book performs into the future. Number 9 on the list is Strange Academy issue number 1. And I can tell you that this book is not a stranger to this list because this book has been in the top 10 for the last few months. Unlike King in Black issue number 1, this book has continued to perform incredibly well. At a 9.8, this book has been creeping above its FMV at $220. So far, in March, there have actually been 4 sales of a 9.8 that have actually been above FMV. The most recent sale, $280. This is a book that we should keep an eye on because I think that it has some long-term potential. Number 8 on the list is Department of Truth issue number 1. And this book is back with a vengeance. Last month, this book was sitting in the 17th spot on the list and is now ranked 8th on the list. There isn't a whole lot of sales data for this book in Go Collect yet, but a quick search of eBay reveals that a lot of copies are actually changing hands. The high water mark for this book is the proof of concept variant for issue number 1. And this book has been selling upwards of $410 in just the last few days. Department of Truth is definitely one that we should keep an eye on. I do believe that this one has been optioned, and so this book could have some long-term potential. Number 7 on the list is a little bit of a shocker, to be honest. We are talking about Amazing Spider-Man issue number 361, the first full appearance of Carnage. This book has been slowly creeping up the list for the last 3 months. It started out in 21st position and is now sitting pretty high on the list. And I think in many ways this may be fueled by the pending appearance of Carnage in the Venom 2 movie, set to be released this summer. Record-breaking sales may also be contributing to the steady influx of submissions. The most recent sales for the last month have all been north of $1,000 against a Go Collect FMV of $875 for a 9.8. Again, this book is performing really well and there are some drivers behind it. This is a book, again, that we should not take our eye off of, especially if you have a newsstand copy. That is definitely something to pay attention to. Number 6 on the list is Ultimate Fallout 4, the first appearance of Miles Morales. And this book has come back with a vengeance, jumping back into the top 10 after being as low as the 15th spot. And I will tell you that this book continues to outperform people's expectation, breaking through the $3,000 mark for a 9.8 recently, which is really impressive for a modern comic with almost 4,000 total copies on the CGC census. This high price tag for a cover A 9.8 is only put to shame when you look at the prices that the variant cover is commanding. This book is pulling in values north of $13,000, which is an insane amount of money. Number 5 on the list is Something is Killing the Children, issue number 1, a fan favorite. It is back on the list. This book, like some of the others that I've mentioned, is continuing to perform incredibly well. Boom Studios definitely has a hit on its hands, especially when you start to look at how this book is performing from a dollars and cents perspective. Sales for this book since the start of the year have been north of $425, with a high water mark of $630 for a 9.8 in February. I've said it a couple of times. This too is a book to keep your eye on. If you have an opportunity to snag a copy of it, it is not a bad way to go because it does not appear that this book is slowing down in any way, shape, or form. Number 4 on the list is a first appearance. And what I mean by that is that this book has not been seen on the list in any way, shape, or form in the last 3 months that I've been reporting this data from CGC. I am specifically talking about Invincible issue number 1. And I am not aware of any new rumors or any kind of progress that has been made on this title. But what we do know at this point is that the Invincible show is set to appear on March 26th on Amazon, and that could be part of what is fueling this influx of books to CGC. It's going to be very interesting to actually see how this book performs as people get their first views of this animated show on Amazon. And if the show performs really well, we could see Invincible number 1 stay on the list long term, but only time will tell how that shakes out. With that said, when you look at some of the sales data, what you see is that this book is selling for roughly $2,500 at a 9.8. That's not bad at all. Number 3 on the list, to the chagrin of many, is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles The Last Ronin issue number 1. This book has sat atop the list at the number 1 spot for the last couple of months, but has been dethroned by 2 other books that I'll talk about in a second. And I will tell you that neither one of these books is a Donnie Cates book, which is a little bit of a surprise because in many ways, Donnie has dominated the list going back to December 2020 when we first started to roll out data. In the number 2 spot, we have Amazing Spider-Man issue number 55, a classic cover from day one. I have to tell you that I am not surprised that this book is still on the list. I am a little surprised that it is actually in the 2nd spot on the list. But this book captured people's attention from the very start. So I'm not surprised that it's there. But I think that the additional covers that they have been introducing, the different color variations, have only fueled to keep this book on the list long term. And time will tell whether we start to see a decline or not. When I looked at the sales data, what I ended up seeing is that Go Collect shows that there have been about 15 sales of this book at a 9.8 since January this year. There does, however, appear to be some softening in the values that are being seen. The last sale at the end of February was $180, and that now has trickled down to about $87 in March. So again, it's going to be interesting to see whether we continue to see this volume of submission for Amazing Spider-Man 55 and what starts to happen with the prices associated with this book at a 9.8. If you haven't guessed it, the book sitting in the number 1 spot is Star Wars High Republic issue number 1. And this book has been a fan favorite since day one, resulting in this book moving from the 5th spot in January to the number 1 spot in February. And my guess is that we are going to see this book in the top 10 for the next few months because everything Star Wars is super hot. When I went to go collect, what I saw was that the sales data for this book, issue number 1, was somewhat limited. There were about 4 sales with an average price of $76 at a 9.8. When I went to eBay, what I saw was some similar sales volume, still averaging around that $76, $79 mark. With that said, the variant cover of High Republic issue number 1 is actually performing better than the average. And so that is definitely a book that you might want to investigate. During last month's video, I mentioned a few outliers at the very end of the video, and people seem to enjoy that. So I wanted to make mention of a few additional outliers for you now. What's interesting is that the very first outlier isn't a comic. It's a concert poster that not only broke into the top 10, but came in the 5th spot. We are specifically talking about a Jefferson Airplane concert poster. And according to the folks at CGC, this poster is submitted fairly often and clearly was submitted in some pretty hefty quantities, enough for it to make our list. And I've never seen this thing before, so I wanted to make sure that I was able to at least show you all what this thing looked like. One of the other outliers is in relation to Todd McFarlane, the Todd father, who recently made a major announcement about the Spawn universe and some books that he is going to be releasing later this year. What does this have to do with the list? Spawn number 1 continues to show up in the top 21. It's definitely low on the list, but it's still on the list nevertheless, and I have a feeling based upon Todd McFarlane's recent announcement, we may see an influx of Spawn titles into CGC. So I definitely want to encourage you to stay tuned for the months ahead, for the lists that are going to be coming out, to see what moves and shakes as we run it down. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, I certainly want to encourage you to hit the thumbs up button. And if you haven't subscribed, definitely want to encourage you to do that. If you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects.